the course of my life, I've heard people talk about a lot of things that happened in Game of Thrones. Pretty much all of them making me climb up the hill of I'm never going to watch this ever, and honestly, it's probably the hill I'll die on. But something that I've heard pretty much everyone say is that Season 1 is a perfect adaptation. That everything happens exactly like in the book, with a few tweaks here and there. More substantially, the ages of the characters. Everyone has been aged up. So, it's not a perfect adaptation then? Aside from the obvious logistic holes this creates, because how would this guy have been old enough to fight in the I Wanna Rule war and then still be strong and young enough to fight in the Get Out of Here war a billion years later? Newsflash, 14-year-olds and 25-year-olds act in different ways. Let's take Dany for example. She was 13 and I don't remember if she turns 14 in a Game of Thrones or... anyways, 13/14 and was aged up to be 17/18. I was 19 when I read it for the first time, so pretty close. Drogo is dying, she's pregnant with a prophecy baby, the Khazar is falling apart by the minute. Jorah tells her, hey, let's go to one of the free cities, sell the dragon eggs, and raise this child so he can fulfill the prophecy. Which is very reasonable. Then there's Miri, who's like, I can do black magic and bring him back to life. And then chooses to go with a latter option, the riskier and not reasonable one. So 19-year-old me is reading that and goes, wow, 14-year-old me would totally do that. I always appreciate when people write tweens and teens accurately because it's so easy to forget what it's like to be that age. But anyways, note that I didn't say, wow, I would totally do that now, because I wouldn't. Sure, you can think to yourself that it's a fantasy realm, they're raised differently from how we're raised, blah 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 blah. But it changes the character. And particularly in A Song of Ice and Fire, a complex political game where the character is crucial to said political game, it changes everything. Now they should think that Dany is stupid. Which she isn't, she's just a scared kid. And the fact that the story is gonna try to stick to what the original book did, when you're thinking that the character is something else, it starts to create these increasingly egregious logic mistakes. Because you're like, what am I watching? This is making no sense as time goes on, you know what I mean? Robb being a fully grown man, raised to be Lord Stark, marrying someone outside of the arrangement and just hoping for the best, that's unthinkable. No matter how honored and an idealist he was, he would have known not to do that. But when we remember that he's, 15, and all he has in his brain is the ideals of his father and very little of the real world, suddenly it makes a lot of sense. Well, okay, when it comes to complex stories, changing the ages of the characters can make everything crumble. But most books aren't these epic, overarching narratives, so it isn't a big deal, right? Wrong. Even if those changes don't blow craters in the narrative of simpler books, it can still completely change the interpretation. If you've ever read anyone make an analysis, no matter how short, about Frankenstein, it probably sides heavily with the creature. Because yeah, what in the scallop, you work your butt off to make this guy and only realizes that he's hideous when he wakes up and then just lets him fend for himself? Sick and twisted. In pretty much all Frankenstein adaptations, the guy cast as Victor usually looks to be his, 30s, 40s? So that helps the sick and twisted narrative, because this grown man had all the time in the world to reflect upon what he's doing, and then he does it anyway and villainizes his creation on top of it. Oh, jail for Dr. Victor. Jail for Dr. Victor for 1000 years. Yeah, okay, what if I told you that Victor was 21 when the monster was completed? He started university at 19, immediately got tunnel vision with his goal of creating a life, and then finished him at 21. And then he was on the verge of death for like 3 months after, sick with horror for what he had created. I'm not trying to say, oh, poor Victor did nothing wrong, because, like, yeah, it was a stupid idea and he was irresponsible, and he was responsible for the creature. But, like, he was 21. Who on this green earth has never done something without thinking just to see what would happen, and then kaboom, it blows up in your face? And this metaphorical explosion killed his brother, planted evidence so their innocent maid would hang for it, killed his bestie, killed his wife, all this misery made his father die, and probably something else I'm forgetting. I mean, cut Dr. Frankenstein some slack. Dude wasn't even a doctor, didn't graduate or anything. Another way in which the characters' ages are adjusted that always cracks me up is when mangas and animes have the characters be the ages of the target audience, even when that makes no sense at all. Not really a criticism because they do it on purpose, and I'd feel stupid to criticize something that was done on purpose, but I find this marketing strategy like really dumb, so maybe this is a criticism. Anyways, my favorite example of this is in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. This is Abakio. He becomes a police officer at 18 because that's the minimal age in Italy to do so. His ideals shine bright and he tries to be the best cop he can, but things that happen and time wear him down. From the perfect officer, he becomes corrupt, accepting bribes and etc. But eventually the law finds out and he serves time for his crimes. He gets out, becomes goth with long grey hair and an alcoholic, disillusioned with his dream of bettering society as a cop. Then he meets Bruno, who invites him to join a gang, and they create a beautiful bond of trust, respect, and companionship. And then Giorno, the main character, arrives and they go on to live through the adventures of Ventuario. How old is Abakio? 21. So all of this happened over the course of 3 years at the very most. Right. So yeah, character ages do matter. Stop trying to make everything be appealing and hot, and start casting the scrawny 18-year-old actors so as to not, traumatize the kid actors. And if you're going to change those ages, you better be ready to do the work of adapting the character decisions and motivations. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, blah 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 blah, and I'll make more videos if an anvil doesn't fall on my head. Bye!